into the role of e-governance, leveraging e-governance. And I just set it up initially for the very first 4-5 minutes. I'm sure by choice you have come to this panel, so itna zyada kuch wo nahi hoga, surprise or anything that you would not already be aware of, but helpful to set it up. And then we have 4 interesting lightning talks lined up, and then after that we will open up for questions in the last 10 minutes. That's the idea. We will hope to finish 5 minutes early so we can get back to the plenary for further panels that are there too. Right. This is the lineup. I will introduce them as they come as well. But to just set it up, right? Why benefit delivery matters. And again, these are some ballpark numbers, but even if you just think about sort of our scale and population, right? 1.4 billion users. And I know not everybody needs to interact with the government and scheme and every year in that way, but even if you take averages, and from a national government only, if you go to My Scheme portal, they talk about there are 1,000 national schemes. And every state roughly has about anywhere between 500 to 500 plus schemes. So you can imagine the sort of the scope here, right? And even if you assume on average, a citizen needs to interact with the government for a delivery of a benefit or a scheme or a service, even just 1.5 times in a year, right? That we are talking about 2.5 billion physical touch points. The majority of them are physical, right? And not just the elapsed time, but if you think about for a person in a village who has to really go to an office to apply something, the time they have to take out is not just the time that they spend there, but it's almost a day's planning they have to do, travel. So it's a 4 to 8 hour anywhere you can imagine the time that is required per such physical interaction. How many of you remember last time when did you go to a physical bank branch? Right, and now we do all our banking in the pocket. That's the kind of delta that is possible. And even if you do just rough back of the pack calculations based on those numbers, 1.4 billion people, 1.5 interactions, 4 to 8 hours of time that is spent here. We're talking about productive time, right, or to the tune of 3 lakh crores that is being spent just in waiting in line for these things. I'm not talking about all the frustration that comes with it. I'm not talking about all the inaccessibility that comes with it, basic inefficiencies that come up that are there in the system. And again, this is just one way of articulating the problem. The problem itself is not new. I know everybody, all of us who have our feet and ears on the ground are aware of this, what the situation on the ground is. For most citizens, government system is a mesh, you know, right? Right from which is the scheme that I'm eligible for, where do I go and apply for it, what do I need to apply for it, right? What is the status of my application? This is all a mess that they have to navigate through, and we expect them to do that, right? Even from within the government perspective, it's not that streamlined and easy, right? It's not just that it is only the trouble is only for the citizens. From within the government, the people who are on the front line, who are responsible for delivering these services, they themselves face a lot of challenges too, right? And they have no real way of understanding or easily understanding. And then again, the state varies in different states. But what is the status of different applications? Why is something stuck? What do I need to tell them, right? Are we being able to meet the expectations of citizens or not? So on both sides, the huge problem, real economic impacts, real impacts for the citizens in the quality of life, and also for the officials and the field involved in delivery of these services, right? So to borrow the theme that we had in the morning panel, problems to bahut hai, right? Government ke paas. It's a how do we come together to solve it, and that is a real manifestation of that, right? So, and just if you kind of can say, how would you reimagine this, right, in some sense? What could be one way of thinking about it? And I'm sure as we hear more panelists, they will also present each of them will also share their views on it. But one way to also look at it is that basically there are 3 broad sort of thematic areas which, if worked upon, improved upon, can really transform this. And it's not that rocket science also, right? First and foremost is really about the eligibility and discovery, right? What are the set of problems under this thematic area that can be addressed, right? So you would ideally want a system where there are minimum any inclusion or exclusion errors. Those who rightfully deserve the benefit, get it, and get it proactively, right? Not even, the ideal situation would be that they don't have to really apply it. The system is able to proactively identify and deliver the benefits for them. And again, there are a lot of building blocks that can go into enabling that particular vision, right? And the eligibility criteria is applied, right? The discovery happens properly for those who want to apply themselves, or otherwise they get proactively identified. Oops, sorry, going back. The second layer that comes on top of it is then once the discovery and eligibility has happened, how is the application process actually? And again, it doesn't need to be only digital. It in all times will definitely need to be assisted and supported on the ground too, right? But again, how do you make sure there is a one-stop thing? You don't have to run to 10 different offices for 10 different things. Some example was being quoted, right? How can you have proper real-time tracking of what is happening in the system? How is the proactive updates being given that this is the status of where the application is? How is the grievance addressal happening, which actually is happening around it? And a third layer, which is more applicable to the benefits part of it, not so much to the services part of it, but wherever there is a benefit transfer involved, right? How does the actual transfer happen? How seamlessly can that happen? And again, with the Aadhaar Trinity and DPT, a lot of the building blocks are in place. But end to end, this is what you would expect that an ideal sort of situation, like platform or service system should be, which can help make this happen. So with that sort of context, again, the problem is big, the problem is not new, a lot of effort has been going around it. In theory, the answer is not also that difficult, but the devil really lies in the detail, right? And that's where we will set this panel up for the 4 talks that we have from this point on. The way it is being set up is we'll hear first from Ujjwal, who is part of Samagra, is a VP at Samagra, but also has led a program of actually transforming benefit delivery on the ground in Haryana from 2017 to 2020. That will give us a sense of a government's perspective of how things can be done. Other than tech, also what all things need to come together to make it happen. And this was sort of pre the DPG, DPI acronyms were fancy, right? But the core concepts, as I'm sure you will see, are very similar, right? Then Aniket would share a perspective from how Haq Darshak, being a private player in the ecosystem, is also trying to solve similar problems and what are the innovations that they are doing on the ground and working at scale also, side by side with the government, right? So that gives us 2 very different perspectives. Then we will hear from Achal, who is in eGov and will give us a sense of the Digit platform and the journey that it has had, because it's a key player and enabler in this ecosystem and how seamlessly benefit deliverables can be delivered. And then we will hear from Ravi from Deloitte in terms of how the private ecosystem is also coming together around these pieces of technology and really solving the last mile and actually getting it embedded in the government, implemented. How are they building on the open source components and Digit platform to help solve the problem? And then we will open up for questions. Yeah? So with that, I'll call upon Ujjwal.
Hi everyone, I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have 5 minutes, so let me not waste any more time. So I will be covering the journey of Antyodaya Saral. So Antyodaya means people at the last mile and Saral means simple. So this is the work that was done with Government of Haryana to really simplify scheme and service delivery for people at the last mile. So just for context, when we started this journey in 2017, there were 35 plus departments offering 550 plus schemes and services. So there are multiple departments. There are hundreds of departments, hundreds of boards that the government has. Out of them, 35 plus departments were offering citizen-facing schemes and services. And as you can imagine, as a citizen, it's extremely difficult to understand where to go and apply, right? That's an intuitive question that comes to mind. So I need a ration card or I need a driving license. I don't care if a transport department provides that. I don't care if it's a food and supplies department. It's not possible for me as a citizen to know these level of details of what happens at the government end. So that was the complication that Haryana was also going through. Further, there were different departments that had websites, some did not. There were centers which were partially providing services, some were not. So there was a lot of asymmetry for the citizen to know where can his or her problems get resolved as far as scheme and services are concerned. So that was around the time. Now fast forward to 2021. So that's when Saral started in 2017, and fast forward to 2021, Haryana was ranked number 1 in the Citizen-Centric Governance Index and also was conferred an accolade by the then President of India. But what happened in this journey? Like what led to that transformation? How did Haryana become number 1 in Citizen-Centric Governance Index? Let's come to it. So there are 5 key ingredients, right? What are the key ingredients of this transformation that happened? So 5 of those that I'll cover right now. So the very first being for one-stop solution approach, something that Nitin already touched upon. That as a citizen, wherever I go, the principle that we followed was that you should be able to apply for any scheme and service. Because as a citizen, citizens are the helm of affairs and you design the system around them. That was the principle that was followed. And with that in mind, 3 types of touchpoints envisioned. That I can apply online, I can apply through common service centers which are at a village and ward level, very local to me, very close by, where I can go and apply for any scheme and service. This is a national body, but through Saral, all schemes and services were opened up to the CSCs in Haryana, and also having some centers, state-of-the-art centers. So a citizen from a rural area has a tendency of going to the district office, to the Tehsildar office. So how do you provide state-of-the-art VFS kind of centers for citizens in all of these locations? So 115 such centers were envisaged and developed. Right? So digital and assisted mode was covered through these touchpoints. So this was the first key ingredient. Second was, none of this was possible if there wasn't a unified portal behind the scenes, which could be used at any of the 3 touchpoints that I talked about. So for that, this portal was envisaged. But again, the complication and why this ingredient mattered was that we were dealing with 35 plus departments. There was a labor department with a tech system running for 7+ years. There was a women and child department which had everything running on paper. So very different worlds. These are 35 different organizations that you're wanting to work in a similar manner. So that's why we chose Service Plus, which was a configurable platform built by National Informatics Center, NIC. So one, it was a NIC, it was a Government of India owned portal that built one level of trust. Second, it not only accommodated legacy, the systems that had to be created for fresh, like if there is no service delivery workflow, it not only covered those kind of departments, but it also supported legacy systems, which means you were accommodating for all. And given it was configurable, every department could control their own arena, which built in ownership by design. Without that, driving this kind of a mission would have been impossible, right? So that was the second key ingredient. Third was just taking a strong citizen-centric design approach for each part of application lifecycle. So just to give some examples, having state-of-the-art things, as I mentioned, which was just imagining like VFS. So a lot of you would have been to get there for a passport service, but there's a token area, there's a waiting area, there's a proper systematic counter where I can apply for a scheme and service. Another bit being stepwise tracking updates. All of us are so used to getting that update. Your order is out for delivery, getting to you in 10 minutes. Your Amazon order is out for delivery, getting to you in 2 days. That's very norm. It's a norm for us now. But how do you make it a norm for service delivery? That this is where your application is and this is by when you can expect it. So having stepwise tracking updates. Post-application feedback calls. I have submitted my application, quickly getting a feedback call to know that how the experience of the citizen was. Were they harassed? Were they able to apply without any problem? Just getting that pulse was also institutionalized in the system. And finally, also a centralized helpline. Another example being a centralized helpline where you can just dial one number for any query, any grievance that you have with respect to service delivery. Again, the one-stop mindset and ensuring that all grievances have a simple place for a citizen to go to. Right? So this was the third key ingredient. Then fourth was there was no signal of quality of service delivery in the government system, right? How do you know if the system is doing a good job or not? How are the citizens perceiving it? A lot of states have Right to Service Act, which basically guarantees schemes and services in a certain timeline. Everyone has an act, but very few states enforce that. So a Saral score was introduced as a signal of quality in the system, which basically covered your compliance to Right to Service. If I'm supposed to get an electricity connection approval in 15 days, am I getting it or not? If a ration card has to come in 45 days, is it reaching or not? So that started getting tracked across departments because now there was a centralized visibility for all of these things. So this was the fourth key ingredient that was embedded in the system. And finally, one very, very important ingredient was this, that all of this was done from CM office. So if you are familiar with the governance context, if 35 plus organizations or departments have to collaborate, it cannot happen without someone above them driving that. So there has to be involvement of the Chief Minister's office, Chief Secretary's office to really get all of this done. So all of this was done from CM office. A very core team, Digital Haryana Cell, which was constituted by Samagra, was set up in the CM office to drive this mission. And the state also leveraged the supports of CMGGA, which are the CM fellowship that the state ran for 8 years. The fellows also contributed to ensuring that the systems got set up well on ground. So this was driven from the CM office. But now what did all of this lead to? So what it led to that more than 1 crore annual applications come in the state, and all of this has a clear trace on Saral. There is no new scheme or service delivery that does not come on Saral. Everything has a digital trail. So while there might be paper trails in parallel, but everything has a digital trace in the system now. There's more than 85% compliance to Right to Service Act. 31% reduction has been seen in the processing time because of the signal of Saral score that was introduced, the visibility that was created. 40% increase in applications between the pre-Saral and post-Saral era, which means accessible did kind of reach where it had to. And finally, 4.3 kind of a citizen satisfaction rating based on the feedback calls that were kind of being done. So this is what we could achieve, but leaving aside the numbers and qualitatively the accolades that it got, why it was all worth it and why it mattered is that smile of the citizen. because the now system is more accessible, more transparent and more efficient for the 2.5 crore citizens of Haryana. So that's the journey of Antyodaya Saral, and thank you so much.
Good. We'll take questions towards the end. I want to set up, like, to hear from all the four panelists. So next round, I would like to invite Aniket, who's the founder of Hak and will enlighten us with a very different perspective on what it happens when you're looking from the bottom up. This is what you're looking from the government side down. But Aniket, over to you.
Thank you, Nitin. Actually, very similar. But I think just that private enterprises don't have the kind of resources government has. But I think so. I think we put the kind of life cycle of scheme delivery from a policy to a DEAR acronym, right? Which is discovery, eligibility, application, and redress. And I want to give you an example of all of us to think about. If you want a bank loan, right, a home loan, house loan, then today all of us know that loan exists. 50-60% of the population of the country doesn't know that product exists. If I am a farmer, I don't know whether I can get a loan. For what can I get a loan? If I have land, do I get solar rooftop, drip irrigation, solar pump? That discovery itself, which is an assumption, is something that we have found that doesn't exist. And that is because we are coming with a lot of this first part of policy from a top-down approach. Right? So how do you make the whole system more bottoms up? The second part is eligibility. So we started off actually the Hak journey in 2016 by making an eligibility engine. It's a simple if and or condition engine which, as you put in your information, it tells you what are the government schemes you are eligible for. We digitized around 7,000 schemes, exactly the same numbers. There are about 1,000 central government schemes, 500 to 700 state schemes. A lot of them repetitive, but also conditionality is different in different states. So it does tend to be a version of the same kind of schemes. The third is application, which is, and how do you apply for the scheme, which is mostly in our case assisted tech. And that's again the learning that while India is getting digital, there is, like you mentioned earlier, a very strong need for assisted tech. And that's ingrained in the way we are also working. It's the same how whether you can go to an LIC digital app, but you still need an LIC agent. It's also about the guidance, the last mile support. So we worked on it through the Hak that we have trained. And the fourth, which is also was talked about earlier, is from a redressal act. Because today the government is working a lot on the government scheme onboarding. Some numbers are like we are doing close to 45 crore Ayushman Bharat. It is going to increase with the over 65-70 going to get Ayushman Bharat. We have 30 crore Ishram card holders. But when you talk to a lot of these people on Ayushman Bharat, they don't know what health insurance is. What do you mean by co-pay and complete cashless? Right? Where do you go to the hospital? So there is a huge issue of redressal, which also is a part of literacy. So scheme and benefit delivery and literacy is very closely linked. And again, something that we all assume is a given. So I think this is the framework on which we have worked. And I think on discovery, what we have done so far, and it's a journey that we've been on the discovery for the last year and a half on the backend platform. We've basically put the discovery engine. And it is a multilingual, contextual, multimodal kind of engine that we have put, which can connect you as per your need. And you can not only connect in terms of whether you need a crop insurance, whether you need market linkage tomorrow. So it can also get all the benefits delivered. This is right now live in certain use cases, and this is something that we feel we can build on and scale. The second, like I mentioned, is the eligibility engine. We've done over close to 7 million family eligibility checks through our network. I think the exclusion error is something that again was talked about as a major issue. And I think because there is no standardized schema that is there. And I think for all of us to work on the benefit delivery space, the major challenge is the standardization of schema in different states, in different versions, in different departments. Unless that is done, these engines actually are not very easy to use. I mean, we at Hak, if you will use our eligibility engine, our Hak face a lot of challenges, because the first question comes up, do you have a pakka house? The next question comes up, do you have a goat or a cow? So there's no correlation to questions because the eligibility engines are not standardized and schemes are not standardized. But this is again a problem to solve, and this could be very exciting to build together because the eligibility engine actually now With a lot of innovations that I was also seeing outside, I think this is something to work on. Because even in the government diligence, my schemes and all, this is a major issue. The third is the application tracking. We, like I said, we built a learning management system now. Again on an open protocol to train Haqdarshaks and any kind of agents. We train 40,000 agents. Active rate is 20-25%. But again, in building wallets and services, as much as possible with a combination of hybrid digital, which is a combination of how much they can do physically and then digitally as well. And the fourth one is grievance, which is again at an early stage, but a lot of combination of what we are using, Jan Ki Baat, People Plus AI, other chatbots, but also very bottoms up approach of hearing voices from the ground in terms of grievances on all tracks, not just grievance on whether you got the benefit or not, but on information, on service delivery, on quality, the benefit received, and whether I am on the system or not. This has led to what we are calling a Yojana platform, which is a combination of identity schemes, banks and government. In this, I would say a lot of it is already being covered, so I will not repeat it. But one of the stakeholders that is not usually in the system is the bank. All this money, which is 10% of our GDP, which goes on benefit delivery, social security, it passes through a bank account. Today, if you don't have an Aadhaar seeded bank account, you do not get the money. And in most benefit delivery conversation, banks are not present. And that is a big miss because they are the ones who are actually the pass-through for a lot of these services, and that is where a lot of innovation and scale can happen. This led us to about a year and a half working with the RBI Innovation Hub to create a Yojana card, which is a physical card, QR code based, which does all these services of ID, like putting together all the things that we've talked about of screening, eligibility, social security. We also realized on the right hand side, once the money is coming in, a lot of families are actually taking all the cash out from a banking correspondent, right? This is what is happening with all the women's schemes that are coming up in Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra, or the farmer benefit schemes. So can we also engage in savings, insurance and credit schemes on the right hand side by ensuring that the benefit delivery, the amount that is coming, is also going through to productive schemes that are already there, right? Because whether it is insurance or pensions and others. We've kind of launched it with our B2B model of corporate. So our model, it's a private limited social enterprise model where we work with corporates and employers, mostly to get their workers, farmers access to schemes. The second version is a prepaid card. Now, actually the prepaid card just allows us to innovate a lot more. Now, one of the things that I think a lot of times we get asked is that in today's day and age, why a card? But I think a lot of us who've been on the ground realize the importance of a card for a family, rural and low income families. So I think it's a lot to do with that. But a lot of these things for a digital user can completely be digital as well. So you can bypass the card. The third version that has been launched is with RuPay, which is essentially a debit card. The innovation here is the QR code plus the ability to track the benefit. Right? How do you ensure that the incoming money and the outgoing money can be tracked and ensured that it is going into the same social security benefits that are there. So very early stages for all three products. Only a few thousand cards have been right now tested, but I think it's interesting to see that initially there is a lot of ask for in the banking side in terms of physicality. Where is the branch? Where is the bank? What is a trust? So the two things that we are realizing in benefit delivery which are very important are dignity to the user. It's something you mentioned in terms of access and content. And the second big thing that we are seeing is trust. There's a lot of trust that is broken. So a lot of systems that we put in the system, whether through its government, private, social sector, in terms of NGOs do some fantastic work on the ground in mobilization and literacy. I think citizens, but for them the most important thing also, the second thing is trust on the systems. Just like the centers, we also have about 63 Yojana Kendras. These are very similar to service centers, but we are also doing a lot of training of local agents and local organizations here. These are again in 63 aspirational blocks, where welfare schemes along with financial and digital literacy as a combination is done. This has led to us reaching now close to about 6.6 to 7 million families with these 2.5 billion worth of benefits delivered. Which I would say is the MVP or pilot stage in India's context, and I think now we are really seeing and envisioning that how can this be scaled in open protocols and platforms at a much larger India and even international stage. The other thing is we've been working with some small businesses and agents as well. And while we've trained 40,000, I would say, like I said, the active agent rate is about 7 to 10,000 agents, and a lot of these partners have been working. So, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Cool. I'd like to now call upon Achal to now that sets the context of the problem space right from different angles. Let's look at the core building block thinking behind that could be a potential critical enabler for this going forward. Achal.
Minutes is something that lies at the heart of everything we do, which is responsive public service delivery, truly citizen-centric, and how is it possible with the help of building blocks. So, founded in 2003 by Mr. Nandan and Mr. Shrikant Nadamuni, they had a vision to start eGov by digitally enabling city governments to help them function better. So what we started in one ward by digitizing property tax actually moved on to different wards and cities and entire state. Today we are active in 2000 plus cities, 18 plus states and 11 countries. And when I'm saying we, it is the digital public good and it is the ecosystem that has made possible. So coming to the principles of what we do, so we have three large pillars. Building digital public goods, which in our case is DIWOC and Digit, then enhancing state capacity and catalyzing market ecosystem. On the right you will find some numbers, in between you will find the sectoral focus. So these are the four core areas where eGov has been deeply involved in. In the case of urban services like birth and death certificate, property tax, building plan approval, trade license, public grievances. Then in case of water and sanitation, we have a fecal sludge waste management platform, and we also have a like water connections being managed on a platform, and also the revenue and expenditure for rural water schemes managed on a platform. Then in public health, we have the digital verifiable credentialing through DIWOC, which we all experienced during COVID, and health campaigns which are running in Africa. And in public finance, we have a use case in social benefit delivery, which I will delve deeper into a bit later. So now we have of course spoken about different sectors, different geographies, but what has made it possible? This is Digit, this is the building blocks of Digit, but I would focus on a digital public good and call it a generic digital public good, that is what a reusable approach, a modular approach, making it adaptable in different geographies, across different systems, that is what actually which has made all of this possible, because it can be customized as per different use cases. So in this case, this is the various building blocks. You will find here the Digit core or reusable services and shared registries which are there in Digit. Moving on, this is an example from Punjab wherein there was an experience where they took almost 7 years, 3 RFPs and 180 crores with zero outcomes. But with the digital public good, it took them 6 months to digitize various public services in Punjab. I'll skip this part. So now we have been active, deeply involved in Andhra Pradesh, Punjab and Odisha. What also happened with this experience is that the building block approach got the national government also fascinated, and the National Urban Digital Mission actually rolled out the urban stack as Upyog. My colleague Ajay here has been deeply involved into NUDM. So if you have any questions, we can of course connect later. And also the revenue and expenditure platform for rural water schemes was nationally ruled out by the Jal Jeevan Mission. So that's the power of that modular approach, of that reusability. And even more exciting is partners like Deloitte has built various use cases, whether it is works management in Assam, working with Goa Industrial Development Corporation, whether it is Chandigarh Smart City, and I'm sure there are many use cases which I'm not remembering of. Then Selco Foundation is working on an incident management platform which basically helps them to maintain the operations and maintenance of their DR equipments in primary healthcare centers that run on renewable energy. Then Kerala government, High Court came up with a digital e-court system to run their check bounce cases with the collaborative Pukar, which Samagri is also a part of. And Piramal ran a public grievance system in healthcare in Bihar on the same system. During COVID, there was a program with the cantonment boards. So 62 cantonment boards also digitized these public services with an implementing partner called BIT. So that's what we see, that moving to a building block approach actually helps us to scale. So now whatever I have said sounds so seamless and oh wow, so much so has happened. But we have been here for 20 plus years, and whatever I have spoken about has largely happened in the last 6 to 7 years. So it has been a line of experiences, successes, failures, learnings that led to this. So I've mentioned some of the learnings here. There is an experience of Maharashtra that our CEO often talks about, that we took something and presented it to the government, and government actually asked us to leave the room. And that's when we realized that one size doesn't fit all. We have to go and understand the ground much better and actually talk to people who understand it better than us. So that's when one size doesn't fit all. From monolithic solutions to building blocks. That's why it took so many years, and now so much has happened. So it's like a hockey stick curve which has happened because of the building block approach. There were key shifts internally also, like from city to state, solution to platform, ecosystem. One more learning was invested leaders drive change, especially in the government. So we have to identify those change champions and put the power of technology in their hands, because they are the ones who make change possible. And of course, letting others build. When the partner ecosystem will come together, the scaling will happen to another level. And the last thing, capacity building is super, super key, because some people can make change possible, but they might not be enabled with the power of technology. So that's why capacity building plays a major role. This is one of the approach, like in Odisha government actually worked in urban use case, sanitation use case, and also benefit delivery use case. I'll just go speak about it, just click on that. So here you see that there is a set of 24 building blocks or microservices that were used for urban, and 23 of them were used for a solution in sanitation, with 2 things which were newly built, and similarly in social benefit delivery 23 reused and 7 were newly built. And this is famously we call it the Odisha tree, because these are the number of partners, different schemes, different urban service delivery, sanitation worker welfare, livelihoods, all of this came together, and of course that digital public infrastructure or DPG lies at the core of it. Now moving to this, so basically Odisha government came up with the Mukta scheme during COVID. So what they did is they wanted to provide livelihood opportunities to the migrant laborers who had come back. So for that, they basically wanted to streamline that payment system. So there are some of the challenges that talks about the challenges in ULV, CBOs. We can, of course, you can read through in the presentation and if that is being sent to the audience. But there are various challenges with respect to each of the actors that are involved in this. Now, Nitin had shared that presentation in the first, initially. So the top part talked about smart payments. So Muktasoft is that part which is dealing with the smart payment system. So if you see here from projects, once a project is created and approved, the estimate is approved by the chief engineer, ULD, municipal engineer, it is actually, a work order is raised, the measurement book and muster roll. All of this is actually managed by community business organizations, which are the SLGs. So that's how the power has also come into the hands of the community, and they feel empowered enough. And the payment disbursement time has actually reduced by more than 60%. So these are the various building blocks that we use as a part of Muktasoft. Then these are some of the words we heard from Ashutosh and Chandrakanti when we were in Odisha, trying to understand what impact has Muktasoft created, and it was really heartening to hear to them. And that is something which we work for, and when we hear that, it brings that motivation. There is another benefit delivery use case that the Piramal Foundation, eGov and Techri Technologies is exploring right now, in terms of how to decrease the time taken to disperse the scholarships to underprivileged students. So this is a very recent thing, I think a month or a couple of months. So this is something which is completely new, so I thought I'll just mention about it. This is a new use case that has come about, and a lot of students actually drop out of, they don't take the scholarship and they get back to work. So this is something which is going to help them. I'll skip this. Okay. So community, right now, we have actually done a very few initiatives. We have done some projects with C4GD as well. We have a Discord channel, we have a discussion board at GitHub. There is a DPI Academy with Artha Global, and there is also a Digit Academy. But all of this is in a very nascent stage. We really need to work hard on it. We know that the future lies here. And also in the morning we've been talking about AI. We are exploring various AI use cases as well. So the power of the youth actually will play a major role. So this is something which we would of course want to spend more time on. Last, of course, technology is one piece of the puzzle, and like we say, technology building blocks, I guess all of us sitting here and in this entire building are different building blocks as individuals and organizations, and when all of them come together with their own expertise, I think the change in public service delivery is possible. And here's a word from a young software engineer who works at EGAV, and when we hear people say that they are not just coding for the sake of coding, but they know their coding is actually leading to a change, which is something really motivating and helps us to keep working. I also have my personal attachment towards why public service delivery, because I have had really bad experiences, which of course I can talk about later, but that's how my connect with technology and public services came by. So that's what I wanted to talk about. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the discussions.
Thank you. I would take much more time, but I would like to invite Ravi, who is a partner at Deloitte and for more than a decade has been in this space working with governments, both in a B2C and a industry context. Slightly back behind our time. So,
at least the engineer is given less time, so that's all right. Well, Parth sets it up. I think some takeaways. Rihanna is known to spring surprises. We got to see that yesterday. Aniket talked about the digital model which is being done. I thought that was beautiful, and the real framework which you talked about. Anchal, definitely. I think it's been a wonderful journey. I can say this humbly on the behalf of Deloitte, that partnering and unbundling what Digit can do. So while it was conceptualized in a certain framework, I think as we started unbundling it, we started identifying more use cases. Like there were pieces inside it which could just solve grievance redressal, or there were pieces within it which could just do finance management. So it's actually unraveled in a way that even now our American counterparts are interested in what can we do with Digit for them. So we got into that discussion yesterday. So what I'm basically going to quickly touch upon, and I believe I'll take 3-4 minutes for this, is that I think we have established the need and we have established the solution as well, that there are building blocks available which can start solving these. I think where technology partners like us come in is that how do you kind of expedite that particular adoption. So for example, if a state or a country is looking at digitally verifiable credentials for their students who are getting degrees, transcripts and everything, they have to go through a long journey of, okay, first the awareness, solving for the awareness part, whether like a Sunbird RC exists or something like that exists. Second is that they get caught into that entire procurement change, because the procurement is a big problem in government. And managing the funding, how do we get the money, will this work, will this not work, going back and proving and all of that. So we've kind of thought that, okay, maybe, and it's again been a journey, so why not look at DPG as a service, right? Like how do you kind of kickstart that particular journey? What I'll do is probably I think DPI thinking per se, we've established that particular part. I'll keep that short, like my colleagues have already spoken about it. I think this is where it gets started, right? And it's always like I want it now, right? I've been in rooms with bureaucrats. They have told me that these boys don't solve it by then, keep them locked inside, and it should be solved by tomorrow morning, right? As if that would work. But anyways, it's always about now, and it's always then comes the loosening of the purse strings and who gives the money, right? So we're trying to kind of solve for that, both the problems essentially. And as I kind of briefly alluded to earlier, that any procurement process, it's not, I think what I've realized over the last 4-5 years is UN's procurement process is worse than Indian government's procurement process. So it's like they always want the proposal submitted in a day and they will take 8 months to evaluate, right? So it's like that, and then they will kind of get into then again asking us to implement in a day. So that's how it works for them. But the whole decision making, identifying source of funding, going through the prolonged procurement process, and then starting the journey. Okay, now I'll follow an SDLC, I will identify my requirements, I will get the users on board, I'll bring them all together, I'll build something, my build will go on for a year, then my UAT will start, and then it is like, you know how it works, right? So we realized we never got the right requirements. So that's how it used to traditionally work. Now what we are essentially saying is that the fundamental use cases which APIs have solved for, right? Be it credential, be it ID, digit as a service. These are things which can be immediately unbundled and implemented without a lot of requirement gathering. A pilot can be kick-started. So why not look at pieces which are established common problems and which technology can solve immediately. So that is what we are trying to do essentially. Like if I have to give, say, ID as a service, if I have to give credentialing as a service, can I have a one-click deployable asset? So if I have to go tomorrow and do this for Nepal, I will take my credentialing service, which might just be on any cloud, Google Cloud, Azure, Amazon, or whatever, the local cloud, to be a premium instance also. We have an asset or an approach ready to expedite the journey. That's all we are basically trying to solve for, right? And here, the other great part is that there is also interest from some organizations like COS, which are ready to fund some of these pilots. And they are not, I would not really call them pilots because they are prolonged implementations. Like we are in conversation with a Caribbean country where the funder is identified. They just want to solve for credentialing for the students in one university. Now that's a great way to start. Before you try to solve it for the entire country, because they also gain trust in everything. So that is where we are trying to come in, solve for DPI as a package. And I think as a nutshell, as I said, it's one, we all love software which just comes and you click and install and you get running, right? So that's what we are trying, ultimately aspiring to do. There will be contextualization, there will be minimum amount of, I would say, customization required, because you might require labels being changed, like how do you call a student in that particular country or whatever. Those things will happen, but essentially solve for the rapid deployment, and it's absolutely agnostic of the way you want to kind of deploy. As I said, the fund here, at least for the pilot part, there's a funder which exists. We take it to identify the use case and we quickly deploy. And skip this. So here, what we are trying to do is that there is a marriage which is happening between the use case, the country, the use case, and the DPG. Essentially, that's what we are trying to do. And then take it, convince the person, get the funder, get the pilot going. That's all for. Okay. I think one thing which I would like to leave with is that this year we had our we have launched our own DPI playbook, which basically provides guidance to all countries and institutions as to how can they kickstart their DPI journey. So that is something that's publicly available. And that's about it. Thank you.
Cool. I request all the 4 panelists to come on the share table. And yeah, let's just open up for questions. Observations also fine. Yeah, please go ahead. Please introduce yourself as well, and then.
Hi, I'm Lakshay. I'm from Varkha Global. I actually had a question for Aniket. So, for your Yojana card, so what happens there? So, you talk about the Yojana card 2, where the benefit comes in, and then I can invest or like put it in a security or I can use it for credit? Like how does, what is the, where is, you said that it goes into other financial services or products. So what, if you could just explain that a little.
So essentially it's a build on a similar, I mean the construct is already available on the DPG, like Aadhaar seated bank account.
Yeah.
So think of it as a bank account, let's forget the card for a minute. It's a Yojana platform, your bank account, the money is coming in. What we are nudging and pushing is that rather than the person actually withdrawing the money right away, they have a universe of other government schemes that are given at that moment itself.
Okay.
Right, so if I am getting 1500 rupees from the government, rather than withdrawing 1450 through a banking correspondent, which majorly happens on the ground, can we get them to invest in National Pension Scheme, Ayushman Bharat,
Got it.
RD schemes with the post office, then get them their credit score going for the credit schemes, and the QR code enables the identity, the
Got it.
credentials of the citizen in terms of that this person is verified, the documents are in place, because majorly for getting benefits, the citizens struggle with the identity.
Understood.
Right, because the poorer you are, and the more marginalized you are, you have to prove that you are poor and marginalized.
Got it.
So that always happens. So you have to get layers and layers of documents and everything. So how can we solve for that? Some of it is in the build mode and collaboration mode. A lot of it is already built actually by a lot of other partners. So our goal is to how do we use that and also eventually kind of put it under the, I would say, in the payment system.
And is it like an opt-in service? Like
It will be an opt-in system.
opt-in service.
So what we have not been able to crack right now with the RBI is that how can we do this ideally with an existing bank account? That's the easiest thing. So one thing that is there in the card is you have to open a new bank account, which is we have not been able to solve for that because for existing bank account to put a QR code is very challenging, and I think it's difficult to work with banks. So again, something I think, like I said, that very interesting problem to solve for all of us from a banking angle, because then a lot of money that is coming in can be productively utilized with the thousands of crores that is coming.
Yeah, I think that the QR code is interesting. So that is basically, once you get that QR code in some sense, that proves that you are eligible for whatever services that you
that
are
your
available.
eligibility, identity, and the first
All of
part
it packaged as a QR.
And then you can push through the notification that was earlier mentioned, like in Sarah, that these are the new schemes that are coming. Very targeted. Rather than that person again going through the whole process of new scheme has come in, am I eligible?
But equally interesting is what you're saying is why is it only for a new bank? The bank
Yeah.
account is a bank account.
Yeah.
So what is it that prevents it? That's a good question for.
Yeah, I mean, banks to kind of actually, will they open up?
Please go ahead.
My name is Dipanshi. I work with the Nudge Institute and we are currently working with MORE on a project with the ultra poor households. So we are piloting with the graduation approach model. So really working with people who we know that do not even have Aadhaar cards. So our selection process doesn't even involve asking them for Aadhaar, for a completely PRA exercise to be able to do that. But one problem which we will solve for with our own tech product is government entitlements. How do we know that what all government entitlements they already have? And this is for us to know and track the outcomes, but also a lot of requests are coming from the NRLM and SRLMs to know that for convergence requests. That let's say we are working with MORD, we are working under NRLM, but Manrega department also wants to know if they have got the benefit already. Have they got the benefit under Awas Yojana? Now there are Awas Yojanas at central government and state governments. The problem statements are two. One problem statement is for me to know is there any master or anywhere where we can access what all government schemes are active, both state and central, because there is no direct database for that, at least which I know. But if there are any, then we will be very happy to know about it, and will reduce our efforts and increase the targeting of our schemes or any effort which we want to put into government entitlements part of the project and improving those outcomes, because these people are literally highly marginalized and in areas where we don't even go on a daily basis. And the second part is since we know already that they might not even have Aadhaar card, so how do we ensure that these are these individuals and households, ultimately households, get the benefit of all the schemes? So is Aadhaar like mandatory for all? Because yesterday only I had a call with the West Bengal team, and they were saying that most people here do not have Aadhaar cards, and some of the reasons are not even like in their hands. If they had Aadhaar before, the district got changed, and now they are not, their Aadhaar cards are not being accepted or something like that. So these kind of issues do come up. And we work in states like Tripura, currently in states like Tripura, Meghalaya, West Bengal, very remote districts. So that's
Any thoughts from the panel?
So see, yeah, you wanna, I have worked in the ease of doing business space for 3 years, and every state has a single window to find information. The country has a single window. Every ministry has a single window. So there is we have so many single windows, we don't know which single window. Right? The point I'm trying to make is, I think we should start from solving problems for why don't they have an Aadhaar and try and solve for that, right? There are states which are trying to give families an ID or disburse benefits and everything. But on the flip side, what is also happening is that, I can tell you from food distribution, there is so much fraud which is happening because of incorrect seeding of Aadhaar. Right? Somebody comes and picks up 100 kilos in Delhi, somebody goes and then goes to UP and picks up 150 kilos more. We don't know what's happening. So there's a lot of pilferage which is at risk in case we don't have an ID. Just solve for. Now, there are practical ground level problems which my fellow practitioners know more about, but my limited sense would be that solve the basic problem, try and solve that basic problem first.
Yeah, I think quite similar. On the first part, like you're saying, there are no, I think Aniket also covered, there are no standard schemas, no standard repositories or registries of these are the schemes that government of Goa offers or government of Telangana, because there's no standard registry. There are different states who have these one-stop portals that are at least serving as registries for those particular states, but some don't. So there's no straight answer to it. At least whichever states have that, those could be leveraged. And for center, my scheme is trying to play that role to some extent, but still it's also not fully exhaustive, but still trying to cover a large part of the problem there on discovery of schemes basically. And what you were also saying, that how do you exclude out people who are availing other schemes? Again, national level, there's no such intervention at this point in time. Like just mentioned that there are databases that states are attempting, family databases, which keep a record of which are the other schemes that this citizen has availed, because that then adds to your footprint of benefit delivery essentially. But that's again at state level, so no standard answer. And on the latter, it's a very hard question that you're asking, but after a long effort, Aadhaar has now become the base to curb all the issues that we were facing earlier. It's also helping a lot of people get benefit. So without Aadhaar, not.
Aadhaar, one thing is to remember is Aadhaar is nothing to do with citizenship. Aadhaar is only an identity.
Yeah.
The moment we start thinking like that and start thinking from a perspective that these families, if they want to be brought into the payment ecosystem, you'll suddenly see the machinery will give them Aadhaar. So it's also the angle with which we look at Aadhaar, rather than schemes. If we think payments, then I think probably the ecosystem might start looking at it. It is a challenge, but I think Aadhaar is in a way, not necessary for a lot of schemes as per Supreme Court ruling. It is today necessary to bring them into the payment ecosystem.
One last question, then we should move.
Okay, let the.
Okay, sure. So, I actually have two questions. One from Ilma. My question was that you mentioned that you brought together 35 plus departments in right to compliance. So, how do you accomplish that?
So the Right to Service Act was existing, and there were already some 200 scheme services notified under the Act. What we did was, one, get all other scheme services also notified legally under the Act with certain timelines depending on the type of scheme and service. But more than that, the dashboard or the Saral score that I shared, just actually digitally having all of the application tracks in one place, and basis that showing that where is the right to service compliance for a particular department. Are they really? So 12th October is when it was supposed to be delivered, but the data says that it was delivered on 20th or 30th November, which means they did not comply to the right to service. The bigger change was not just having it in the Act, but enforcing it through digital traceability, bringing it into the visibility of the officials who are supposed to manage and ensure timely delivery. So enforcement is where we worked. basically.
One question to you, sir. You mentioned playbooks by the Deloitte, so I wanted to know the playbook, which actually individual entity does the playbook target actually? What about?
So it's, as I briefly mentioned, it's about, it could be countries, it could be state governments, it could be local bodies, anyone and everyone, or it could be private institutions also, because we are right now also in talks with large agricultural companies who are exploring some of the open network based solutions for discovery, right? So it's, the audience is not really targeted to a certain kind of, I would say, confined to government or any funding agency or whatever. It's pretty open who wants to come in.
Because when we talk about playbooks, like in my opinion, when I think about playbooks, it's about incident playbooks, like we talk about in cybersecurity,
Yeah.
that we have to handle threats and all. So when you mentioned that Deloitte has taken out a playbook for something like that, so is it any particular person whom you will target from the start?
It's an adoption playbook. So, for example, if Delhi government wants to adopt, or rather, if you go back to the same example, if West Bengal government wants to solve the credentialing problem, there is a certain DPG which is available. How can they start their journey on adoption of that particular DPG? Because there's also someone who's willing to fund to start that. That's how.
Cool. I'm sure if you have more questions, please feel free to grab hold. There's tea after the two interesting panels and sessions too, and you can carry the conversations there too, and also drop in or just connect and then offline connect. But I would like to really thank all the 4 panelists. And in the interest of time, there are 2 very interesting panels down, which I want all of you to also not miss a chance for. We would like to just thank the panelists, and then we'll go down to the plenary. Can I have a big Okay. I think nothing pictures. He's taking videos. But I think we can just hand it over. You don't have to take the pictures. Thank you. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you very much, Anika.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.